Desktop CNC machines live in a weird space, because at this scale it's all about balancing competing priorities. At the two ends of the spectrum are machines that either require endless tinkering or come with huge limitations in the name of approachability. The Genmitsu 3030 Pro sits right in the middle, and that's why it's been on my radar for a long time. So when I reached out to SainSmart and they offered to send one over, I wanted to see how it holds up and whether I'd actually integrate this into my workflow as a designer and furniture maker. When you start unpacking the relatively small delivery box, you'll realize a few things about this machine. It's compact, it's fully aluminium, and it uses linear rails on all axes. These are quality components, and that design choice alone tells you what this machine prioritizes above all others: rigidity. And that will be a running theme in this review. Assembly is pretty painless, all components are well labelled and instructions are clear enough. The machine arrives largely pre-assembled, which already puts it ahead of many entry-level CNCs, not only for ease of assembly, but I'd argue equally for ease of disassembly when you want to store it away in a small workspace. SainSmart says it takes about 10 minutes to fully assemble, which is a bold claim, but I'd actually agree with them. This came together in no time at all. It comes with a modest 300 watt spindle motor and a 1/8 inch collet, more on that later. It's connected via two simple cables. In fact, one thing I don't like is how the cable connector just kind of dangles freely and could get caught between the track and the spindle mount. This feels distinctly unrefined for an otherwise well considered bit of kit. Software support is also solid. It runs standard GRBL based firmware, works well with common CAM tools, and doesn't lock you into a proprietary ecosystem. The cabling is also straightforward and even comes with cable ties to keep things nice and tidy. The first thing you'll do is run the included test code file, and setting this up is a good way to get a sense and familiarize yourself with how the machine is operated via the very handy offline controller. The idea is that you write your toolpaths onto an SD card and then you insert it into this controller. This negates the need to physically connect your laptop to the CNC. Then using the included Z probe, you first set up the Z height. You then manually move the spindle into where you want your origin position to be, and then you lock these in as your 0 coordinates. Then all you have to do is load the file and hit play. And really, as a workflow, I think SainSmart have kind of nailed it here. I can't imagine this being any more user-friendly. The Z probe and the spindle are all wired into the system, making it feel very integrated as an experience. And personally, it's a massive benefit not having to take my laptop into my dusty workshop anytime I want to send a file. The controller also has an emergency stop button if you see something has gone awry. CNC milling is a noisy and messy process, which is why I'd recommend adding on a dust shoe. You have to buy this, the spoil board, and all the cutting bits separately, so factor this into your overall costs if you're thinking of buying. And if you are thinking of buying, I'll leave some links in the description below. My next test is to see how it handles hardwood. These are some parts I modelled in Rhino, which I then exported to Fusion 360, where I could prepare the toolpaths. This can be a bit of a trial and error process, so let me know down in the comments if you'd be interested in seeing a more focused tutorial on how I generate toolpaths, and I'll plan to make a future video. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel not to miss that. So same process as before, and with the file loaded it can get going. Where the 3030 Prova really stands out is in its rigidity and consistency of cut. The stepper motors are rated to have an accuracy of plus minus 0.03 millimeters. The frame is solid, there's very little play, and under load that rigidity matters the most. That's in part due to the spindle only having to move in the X and Z axes, while the bed itself moves in the Y axis. You can feel it when the machine is running. There's less vibration, less chatter, and more consistency. It doesn't feel like a hobby machine at all, it actually feels like a scaled down, proper tool. Of course, that rigidity comes at a cost. The work area is limited to roughly a 300mm square with a 78mm max cutting height. I'd still argue that's a decent size for making small parts and even furniture components or custom joints. But saying that, I think it really would have been perfect to just have an extra 10cm in one axis. For me, that trade-off is potentially acceptable, and you can still work with pieces that stick out of the cutting bed just so long as they fit between the two side limits. And you know, the best thing about having a CNC around is that it gives you time to focus on the other more important things in the workshop. Anyway, where was I? I mainly work in wood, but this machine is capable of cutting plastic and some metals. The only downside to the power of the spindle is that it limits the feed rate, which means machining time can be quite slow. So this small piece, for example, took around 40 minutes to cut. Of course, the end product still needs a bit of post-production. I left a little extra material on one side to sand it all flush later, but the joints came together very precisely. So as a stock experience, I found the 3030 to be surprisingly capable out of the box. But where this machine really gets interesting is when you start to upgrade it. The first and most obvious thing to upgrade would be the spindle, going from the stock 300 watt to 710 watt, or even as much as 1500 watts. The fact it comes with an extra spindle mount for larger routers is almost encouraging you to make this upgrade. If you're intending to cut metals, then it's almost mandatory. And once you do, it unlocks a whole new level of machine. The feed rate can be increased, you can use larger bits, and the machining time drops significantly as a result. I tested this out on a piece with a bit more complex curvature, with both a roughing and a finishing path. The machining time ended up at around 1.5 to 2 hours. I'm using the Genmitsu 710 watt router, so this is a little bonus review within a review. I really like how you can keep an eye on the spindle speed with the digital gauge. I also like that it uses an ER11 collet, which feels preferable for CNC machining as opposed to using a trim router. It's not brushless though, but at this price point it feels good quality, and over the course of almost 2 hours of constant use it was not at all hot and ran consistent and cool. Now, just for the record, even though the stock spindle is definitely underpowered, I didn't hate it anywhere near as much as I thought I would, and I found it surprisingly capable. However, the upgraded spindle just gives a cleaner cut and leaves a better surface finish overall. The only downside is that whatever router you go for, it won't be hardwired into the CNC itself, so you have to do this routine of switching on your vac, switching on the router, then starting the toolpath, and then of course making sure you turn the router off manually once the job is complete. This makes the experience feel less integrated, but overall it's not a bad trade-off for unlocking the full potential of the machine. So while this is finishing up, a couple of other reflections. I wish the machine came in a different colorway, such as black or all silver. The dial of the controller is a bit clunky to use and navigate the menus. Also, I wish the offline controller had a pause button once your project is up and running. You can pause a project if you're connected via a computer with the included Candle software, so it would have been nice to bake this functionality into the controller too. None of these are deal breakers though. That said, the Genmitsu 3030 Prover is not exactly for everyone. In fact, desktop CNCs as a whole haven't quite made that generational leap in the same way 3D printers might have. They're still too noisy, too messy, and kind of dangerous for a mass market. The software experience with Fusion or similar programs is also way too technical. But that isn't the point of this machine. If you're a maker who wants to introduce a digital workflow into your process, and you want a compact, rigid, accurate CNC that fits into a small workshop and actually delivers repeatable results right out of the box, this is one of the best options in its class. This model I think finds the sweet spot of having all the quality of life features like the Z-probe, upgraded spindle mount, an air cooling pipe and the offline controller all included in the box, as well as potential for some other neat party tricks like 4-axis milling or laser functionality as optional upgrades. Desktop CNC machines are always a compromise. What the 3030 Prover does well is choosing the right compromises with an intentional upgrade path built around that foundation.